In the spring of 1935, 14-year-old Lyudmila Yosefna left home. She did not run away secretly. On the morning she left, her father stood at the door and silently watched his lonely daughter walk into the horizon. Many people starved to death in the village. When spring came, many families ran out of food. Most of those who still had some strength struggled to leave their hometown. In 1935, a hungry girl sold her 14-year-old body for a piece of bread. Lyudmila. The father also had to leave home to find a way to make a living. He no longer cared about his 14-year-old daughter. A few nights before leaving home, his father called him under the lamp and smoked mahe cigarettes one after another. "You have grown up. Maybe you will say you are still in school, but your mother married me when she was 15. Without food, men will starve to death, but women will always be better." Lyudmila cried, but she did not complain about her father. Her father was a hard-working farmer, but his hands could not bring back food from the land. Lyudmila Yosefna's hometown, Gomel, is located on the border of the former Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, more than 300 kilometers away from Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. The Ukrainian plains and the Kuban region had always been the breadbasket of the former Soviet Union and even the whole of Europe. But hunger and famine swept the Soviet Union again and again, and even Lyudmila's wealthy hometown was not spared. In 1935, a hungry girl sold her 14-year-old body for a piece of bread. The Great Famine. From the late 1920s to before World War II, the Soviet Union did achieve remarkable achievements in heavy industry and military industry, but its agricultural policies repeatedly led to large-scale famine and serious social crisis. Stalin, the top decision-maker, advocated the implementation of comprehensive collectivization, and the peasants put up a stubborn resistance to this aggressive economic policy. In response to the peasants' resistance, the Soviet Union's top authorities carried out a large-scale violent suppression. The intensity of suppression continued to escalate, and even armed forces and military aircraft were used to suppress it. However, the soldiers who were suppressing the peasants were also peasants, and when they were suppressing the peasants, their hometowns were also suppressed by other soldiers. Therefore, the soldiers were unwilling to work hard, and the suppression operation did not go smoothly. In the end, the suppression was completed and the riot was completely quelled. Tens of thousands of peasants who participated in the riot were shot, and hundreds of thousands were exiled. The implementation of large-scale collectivization ultimately resulted in a great famine. In 1935, a hungry girl sold her 14-year-old body for a piece of bread. The shocking famine. During the years of man-made famine, millions of people died of hunger. It was estimated at the time that about 5 to 7 million people starved to death. The Soviet State Security Bureau's report reduced this number, but the number in the report also reached a huge number of 3.5 million. All the newspapers remained silent. In order to cover up the truth of the disaster, they had to create a scene of prosperity in big cities like Moscow. Ballet companies performed unprecedentedly luxurious performances, and opera houses staged large-scale plays that were almost extravagant. All foreign journalists were prohibited from reporting outside the suburbs of major cities like Moscow, Leningrad, and Kiev. In 1935, a hungry girl sold her 14-year-old body for a piece of bread. The mother and child in the Great Famine. The Great Famine was accompanied by serious social inequality. In a less affluent society, when some people became extremely wealthy, it meant that more people would inevitably fall into extreme poverty. At this time, the so-called internal store supply outlet was created. This internal supply outlet was historically called the Little Birch Tree Store. The Little Birch Tree Store is a store that provides high-quality and cheap goods to privileged people. The same 1 ruble can buy 10 or even 20 times more than what ordinary citizens can buy in ordinary stores. Lyudmila wandered the streets and saw with her own eyes the disparity between the rich and the poor. Bustling Moscow. On the streets of Moscow, children of high-ranking officials parade through the city in their sedans, while ordinary young people are working with hose in the waist-deep, icy sewage in the Moscow subway. The children of high-ranking officials are holding coveted and important positions in important departments of the country. Clubs that provide luxury services to the privileged people also appeared in major cities at this time. These clubs included the Factory Director Club, the Factory Director's Wife Club, the Officer Club, the Car Owner Club, and the Western Dance Club, and many other entertainment venues. Workers who produce caviar for the rich. Widespread hunger and death left hundreds of thousands or even millions of children homeless. Wandering and begging, stealing, and selling their bodies became the fate of these children. On April 7, 1935, the Soviet government promulgated a law unprecedented in the history of world civilization, and the full text of this law was published in the Izvestia newspaper. This law stipulated that children over the age of 12 should bear the same responsibility as adults for all crimes they witnessed, starting from theft up to and including the death penalty. This law was shocking and attracted many people's doubts. Soviet newspapers explained the matter this way: the new law is targeting only street children who steal food from collective farm granaries and railway station cars. But the question is, why would children steal food from granaries or trains? The newspapers did not give an explanation, nor would they. In fact, before this law was enacted, there were even more outrageous things than this. A family dying of hunger. In the spring of 1932, in response to the hundreds of thousands of homeless children who crowded train stations and large and medium cities, the authorities issued a secret order. All children caught while robbing granaries or stealing trains and contracting syphilis would be secretly executed. With the gradual improvement of the economy and the implementation of strict laws, the problem of street children was to large extent solved by the mid-1930s. However, the fundamental problem was still not solved, so when the natural disasters broke out in 1939, a large number of street children appeared again in the spring of 1940. Lyudmila was a victim of the gap between the rich and the poor. She ended up on the streets of Moscow, and hunger took away her only remaining dignity. In order to have a full meal, the 14-year-old Lyudmila had to sell herself to a brothel and sell her body. Lyudmila fell into dire straits and lived a life worse than death, until the war broke out and she joined the army and became a female soldier in the Great Patriotic War. Girl in the Great Famine. Lyudmila wrote about this painful past in her diary. She would always remember the luxury of the children of high-ranking officials on the streets of Moscow, and would always remember that she had sold her body for a bite to eat. This was the reality in the Soviet Union at the time. No matter what words future generations use to cover up this history, they cannot erase the truth of this cruel past.